Hi, my name's Christine Chester. I'm one of the partners at Screenprinting. I've been teaching textiles and dyeing and printing for over 20 years and have been using Thermofax, or what we now call digital thermal screens, for 10 or 15 years. I'm going to show you today in a very quick video how to use a mini screen, but the principles for using a mini screen and any size of screen remain the same. So you'll need a little bit of equipment around you to make your life a little bit easier. First of all, when you're printing on card, you need a reasonably hard surface. I'm protecting my surface with some paper, and that's going to be fine for my hard surface. You could try with plastic, but plastic tends to be a little bit more smeary. If you get any ink on there, it's much harder to clean it off, whereas with a piece of paper, you can gather it up, chuck it away, put another piece of paper down, and you know that you're not going to pick up any stray ink from anywhere. If you're working on fabric, then your surface would need to be a little bit softer. But we're working today on card, so a piece of paper and a hard surface is fine. I like to keep my working area clean by using an old cat litter tray. You could use a tray or anything to define a little space where you can keep your ink, your squeegee, your frame, so when you've done your printing you can just put it down over here in the container and you know that you're not going to get your working space dirty with ink. You need your screen, of course, your digital thermal screen or your Thermofax screen. You'll need some ink. I've chosen to use magenta today. Our inks that we sell here at Screenprinting are fabric ready inks, but they're quite able to be used on paper as well and require no fixing on paper, just a good 24 hours to dry and cure. A teaspoon, because you're only using a little mini screen, you don't need a lot of ink, so a teaspoon will give you about the right amount of ink. Your cards, of course, and you'll need your little squeegee. The mini squeegees, our squeegees are made to fit the sizes of screens that we provide, so our mini screen requires a mini squeegee. And although they're not absolutely necessary, I think a pair of gloves maybe are sensible, depends on how messy you think you are. But they do keep the ink away from your hands. Certainly the ink is not poisonous or hazardous in any way, but it will actually make your fingers dirty and stain them. So if you know you're not a particularly clean worker, a pair of gloves you could use. I wouldn't use marigolds, they're far too thick. But a pair of latex or non-latex equivalent gloves, vinyl gloves, something like that, will give you a nice sensitivity of touch and be easy to use. And lastly, a little bit of kitchen roll, just in case you do blob something somewhere. Just makes life a little bit easier. So I'm going to put my gloves on. I have my card in front of me. I'm going to use my screen. I'm going to eyeball where to put the screen image in the center of my card, making sure that the fold on my card is in the right place so my image is not upside down. And then I'm going to take a teaspoon and just dibble. Oops, that's probably a little bit too much. Take a little bit off. I make sure that the ink goes all the way across the screen, so that way you know that the ink is going to not miss any of the design on the screen. And then I take my squeegee, I get my squeegee right behind behind the bead of ink, and smoothly and with one action I pull the ink down across my design. Then I lift it up and bang it back at the top again. I lift off my screen and there is my image. So then I take another card and I put my screen down. Now this time you have to be very careful because you've already had ink going through there. You must be very careful not to move that screen. And if you want to put more ink on the screen, just a little bit, to make sure it reaches down to the bottom end of the design on the screen, just do that. But you notice I put my squeegee down in my cat litter tray to keep my working area clean. And then I'm keeping my squeegee almost upright as I draw it down across my design. Popping my ink, spare ink at the top of the screen, using my little finger just to separate the paper and the screen. And there I have another design. Now, you may want to use a soft frame screen, and a soft frame screen works the same way, with the exception that actually you don't want to put too much ink on your soft frame screen, because if you do, as you lift the screen, the weight of the ink carries the screen down, and therefore you can drop ink on the screen, on the card. So it's very important that you actually don't put a lot of ink on. This time I'm going to use a little bit of orange. I'm going to wipe my squeegee. Saves me continually washing it. I'm going to wipe my squeegee clean from my previous screen. And then I'm going to draw my screen down and lift off carefully. So here's my second card. Now, with the soft frames, it's much harder to actually get that ink down from the bottom end. So I leave mine at the bottom and just gently push the ink up to the top. And then very carefully roll it off. Just have to be careful when you are putting your soft frame down to actually put it down from one side and then let it go down and then lift it up again from one side. That helps to stop any smudging that might take place as you move it around. So that's it. It is as simple as that. Now here we are at the sink. It's very important with acrylic inks that you clean your screens as quickly as possible so that you don't block any of the mesh. But it's also quite important that you don't let the acrylics go down the sink. So I wipe the excess off my screen with some kitchen roll. Then all you need is a little bit of water and something soft like a sponge cloth. No brushes, very important. No brushes, no scourers, no nothing like that, because they will damage your screen. And all you need to do is wipe your screen, turn it over, wipe it again. Always wash back and front. And then when you lift it up, you may see that there's little bits of ink gets underneath the tape. What you need to do is just run a little bit of cold water. Squeeze those bits of tape together. It's almost impossible for tape to be so sticky that it stays put. And then once again, run the cold water. And that means that if there was anything still in that, underneath those tape edges, you would have squeezed it out, and it won't be just dribbling out, waiting to clog up your screen. And then you leave it somewhere standing up to dry before you put it away. Make sure it's fully dry before you put it away. If you put damp screens away, then that can cause the mesh to lift. You might see some staining around the screens. That's perfectly normal with acrylics. Don't worry too much about it. It's, again, almost impossible to stop acrylics from doing that. But the important thing is that actually there's nothing that is in the image part, the raw mesh part, that's left in there to block the screen. And again, stand it up to let it dry. And that's it.